Commissioners, Tuesday, December 13th, work session is now called to order. Before we get started, today I would like to wish the National Guard a happy birthday. Okay, in 1636, 386 years ago, the first militias were formed in Massachusetts. So, I'd like to pay honor to them and happy birthday. At this time, I would ask Vice Chairman Morris to lead some pledge of allegiance.
All rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We would bow our heads. Lord, thank you for the many blessings we receive. Thank you for the opportunity to govern and care for our citizens, Lord. Thank you, everyone, remember the reason truly for our Christmas season. Benefit everyone that can. Christ and everything.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, at this time, is there additions to the agenda?
Yes, Chairman. I have one item to add to the agenda. It is discussion of hiring of a lobbying firm for this coming session.
Okay, I'd like to add that to number 13 and move the county manager report to 14.
Okay, sounds good.
Anybody have an objection to that?
Move to amend the agenda as recommended, Mr. Chairman.
Second. A motion and a second to amend the agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Without objection, we will add that to the agenda. All right, moving on. Presentation by Cloudwise. Ira, you got the floor.
So, of course, since it's the IT stuff and broadband, we had technical difficulties first.
Of course.
So, and then, anyway, the Zoom meeting, I couldn't get the mic from our end to work for his end. So we finally got that working like 1 minute till. And now I can't get my notes that I made to, that's what the problem is with relying on electronics over paper. As long as you've got your paper, you're good. But electronics, they don't always sync like you want them to. So I apologize if I ramble a little bit this morning, but I appreciate the opportunity and the time that you've given to us to just kind of give you a quick and brief update from the Cloudwise perspective of what broadband is, what's going on with broadband in Harnett County. Sean Olson, the president and CEO of Cloudwise, has joined us this morning along with Jackie, the community development person, Jackie Lewis, is also joining us, but Sean will do the presentation. He'll give you just a quick update on what Cloudwise is, and then he'll just show you what we've done, what Cloudwise has done in Harnett County, and then also what the Great Grant is going to bring to Harnett County, and then some opportunities that we have after that fact. So, Sean, if you can hear me, and I think I'll just hand it over to you for now. Now, can we hear Sean? The speaker on the computer's muted. No, yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep. I had you muted earlier because I just didn't want any feedback going on, so we got you now.
No worries. Excellent. I absolutely appreciate it. We put together a little bit of a presentation. I know, I guess the folks in the room, everyone has varying degree of background on what we're working on with Harnett County. But wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an overview. And Ira, please, if for whatever reason you guys can't hear me, let me know, and I'll stop and back up. So just a very quick overview. I know a handful of you folks have heard this before, but I think it's good to go back, at least for some of the others. But Cloudwise, ultimately, we were formed in 2012. We started off as an organization focused primarily on business access for kind of southeastern North Carolina. We were and still are a managed service provider for area businesses. I guess the difference between us and maybe some of the others is we do own network, and really the goal for us is to try to help businesses transition over to cloud services. And as we all know, access to the internet's key and vital in that. So we own a pretty substantial network that we had built out. the change for us really, and you'll see on the next slide,
Sean.
we began.
Hey, Sean,
yeah, go ahead.
You're not sharing your screen, so I didn't know if you were ready for that or not, but your screen's not showing on our end. Will you share your screen?
Yeah, problem. Just a sec.
So again, that's my fault because the technical difficulties
Sorry,
Sean's gotten.
no worries.
There we go.
Just let me know when you
it
guys
now.
can see it.
Yeah, we got you now.
All right. Sorry about that. I only went through one slide. So, yeah, just kind of real quick timeline. 2015, we started working with the state of North Carolina on ways that we could help kind of close the gap using some off-the-shelf technologies in order to do so. More kind of budget-friendly products to get service into some of the more rural areas. And as we all know, it took until 2018 to get a general statute passed that ultimately would allow a provider and a county to partner together. And we worked pretty closely with the state on that and started our project with Nash County. And our basis of this was really, in order to solve this problem, we ultimately had to partner with the county itself in order to make that happen. So once that was passed, we ultimately began our project in Nash County and began the conversations across the state on ways that we could partner together to really allow the county to have a seat at the table as we started to make our plans for our network in these counties. And so out the gate, our plan was always to have a county-wide network so we could continue to focus on all the areas and make sure that everyone ultimately was served. And so in 2019, we shifted our mission from focusing on businesses to focusing on entire communities. And that's really where we started our relationship with Harnett County. This is an interesting slide. I know we all hear this and know this now, but this wasn't always the case. I don't think everyone knew it prior to 2020 and the pandemic, but this slide has been a part of our mantra since the beginning. Just the fact that, in order to compete and to progress in today's environment, we have to have quality access. No new news for anyone, I'm sure, in the room. But it's been put to the forefront today. And so this ultimately, and I think we're absolutely happy to meet with anyone offline in order to understand the relationship and any depth of how we've partnered with the county. But our first county we started with was Nash County, and they're the ones that we ultimately helped us get the general statute passed. And the basis for us is, and since the beginning has been, if we could get private investment to, to make interest and have interest in a rural community, we can bring in a fair amount of funding into that community in order to solve this problem and to get access to folks. And we've seen that. There's plenty of funding that's going on, not enough to get everyone served, but there's a lot more funding happening now with the pandemic behind us. That has allowed us to start to bring more capital into these communities. And so you can see, by example, in Nash County, we've been able to get around $18.5 million pushed into that county. And now with Harnett County, we're around 2 years into our partnership with you all. We have around $22 million in award into the county itself. And so the project that we started with you all, which we'll talk about in just a minute and update you on, was really just the start of that. And for Harnett County to be at the forefront of that with just a couple other counties is pretty substantial. And so this is the original project that we started with you all. And so the basis for us ultimately was to leverage some fixed wireless technologies and be mindful this was before the pandemic, that we didn't have access to as much funding, but we still believe fixed wireless is absolutely going to be key ongoing for some of these more rural locations. But we lit up 4 towers ultimately, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we proceed, We made a couple changes along the way. Obviously, there's been a lot that's transpired since we started this project. But one of the major changes that we had ultimately was, Harnett County being kind of the second county that we began working with early on, had the advantage of being able to take a look at what was going on in some of the other counties and what we were working on. And so we started to work originally with one provider, manufacturer, and we got very good results, obviously way better than we had anticipated from some of the off-the-shelf equipment. But there were a couple larger players that were coming to the market that really fast-tracked their progress in 2020 and 2021 in the fixed wireless space. And so about a year ago, we made the decision to switch over to a tier one provider. In short, it's a higher grade equipment. It's all 5G compliant. It is all LTE based equipment. And so it's pretty robust. And so Ericsson was the partner that we began working with. And so the nice part about Harnett County kind of being version 2, if you will, is everything in the county is being built with Cloudwise and Ericsson. And so we've been able to get much faster speeds, much better penetration through trees and those sort of things, which has been great. And we're continuing to build that as that network just went live just about a month or so ago. And I'll talk a little bit more into depth about those. Here, this is all in all some of the work that we're doing, but we've deployed two crews that are in Harnett County. We've hired within that county. They were actively doing installs and work in the county itself as we start to look for a facility to start to build out. So you should start seeing those trucks. They're predominantly working in kind of the Oak Ridge area to start, but they're going to be working pretty much all over the county underneath each of those towers, as well as some of the fiber that I'll talk about in a minute that we've been able to put into the county. So one of the changes that we made early on, and we always talk about this one. In fact, as we go to our investors, we talk about this because this is a great project, but early on with Harnett County, the county introduced us to Camp Agape and the folks that are in that area. And they were in dire need of having service into their camp. And so the Cokesbury Tower that we are currently co-located on, we have a relatively high bandwidth link to that tower. And so we work directly with Camp Agape, which started off as a wireless point-to-point, which means that anyone between that Cokesbury, as you can see in your screen, and Camp Agape would not have been served if we had done a wireless point-to-point connection. And so rather than do a point-to-point connection, Cloudwise and Camp Agape both invested in the capital required in order to build fiber between the two, which allowed us to serve around 100 so households between Camp Agape and Cokesbury. And so we've been doing installs between those two areas of speeds that start at around 300 meg. Or 300 by 300 meg. And I think, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I think there's roughly around 50 folks that have either signed up for internet or have fiber from us today in that area. And that was kind of a unique project that we're definitely proud of. Ira, are there any questions at this stage?
Does anybody have any questions yet? Not yet. No, I think we're good. Everybody's looking
Okay,
interested.
very good.
Moving on.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And so as we started to do this project, we also, we lit up our network for the wireless services. And so, like I said, those came on about 30 days ago or so. And so we're starting to do installs on there. In order to wrap this project up, we are recommending that we do a couple things. I imagine Ira may talk about this, but to the northwest of this map, you will see a pink or red line. That fiber is actually MCNC's network. And for all of those who are not familiar, MCNC is a local REN or research education network that was deployed many years ago to connect all the universities and education platforms and government. And so tying into that network will provide us with the ability to increase our service offerings to that fiber map there up to over a gig. But in addition, it'll allow us to bring on additional customers and provide some additional resiliency for the network that we've built. In essence, a second point of entry in the event our fiber in Lillington were to get cut, we would be able to load balance or fail over to this particular connection. And so we're going to be working on implementing that fiber with Harnett County, as well as extending our fiber network down to the south to additional residents, which will bring on roughly around 145 additional houses that honestly have DSL or lower speeds. So a definite win. Great grant 20. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have questions?
No, I think it was just
Okay.
audio. You're good.
That's okay. So here's a bit of an update on the great grant. So congratulations really to both of us. So we worked with Harnett County early on to go after a great grant for the county itself. And really the way that we work with these is we just really sit down with the county and really understand where eligibility may be and where underserved households might be. And so we have been awarded a project. It will provide around 85 miles of fiber. It'll serve around 3,000 households. And it's roughly a $6.6 million project that we'll be working on. And the timeline for that is around a 2-year timeline, although I'll share with you some information here in just a little bit around why we believe that that'll move a little bit faster. A lot of counties have requested additional maps just around each of the areas, and Ira, I can share these with you so you can share them with your team. But these are just some kind of zoomed in maps of the areas that are served. And what I will share with you too is obviously we, as an ISP, we are always looking for additional investment. So in many cases, you'll see where those lines may run, where our fiber may run. The green dots are the areas that ultimately do get funded by the grant. But really any area that's around 1,500 feet from that red line, we will be offering service to as we start to proceed. So this is the Dunn and Turlington areas. Here's areas in Lillington and Seminole. Additional areas just south of there and just north of it looks like Barbecue. And to the east and west of Barbecue. And again, we can share those maps with you all. The packages that'll be offered are fiber speed, so we will offer, up to 1 gig and over in many instances as we start to even look into the 1, 2, and 5 gig as our networks continues to increase. So, even with Great Grant, the eligibility for Great Grant in the last cycle was really anything that's less than 25 meg by 3 meg, and that still leaves a lot of folks continue to be underserved. But in addition, since we're in Harnett County and we have a really good relationship with you all, we continue to invest into the county so long as the county continues to work with us. So Cloudwise itself is taking a look at additional areas, particularly Irwin, Andrews, Coates, and Dunn. In fact, we've already begun projects in the county itself, as Ira knows. So we have set shelter. We are laying fiber right now and have crews in the community actually working to bring service to folks that either do not have service have underserved service, or even some areas where the gaps may still be between cable and DSL. We're looking at particular larger builds, such as the entire area of Irwin, the entire area of Dunn, Copes, and Angers. I believe this is one of the last slides, but in total, we try to look at this as a total county-wide approach. Right now, I think the relationship has been extremely successful. Over the next between now and kind of end of year 24, we should have around 12,000 houses passed, providing either fixed wireless or fiber to, many of which didn't have any other alternative before. And ultimately a total investment of almost $30 million being put into the county itself, and around 20 million of that coming from Cloudwise, 4 million of that coming from state. And we have more projects. Obviously, there's more grants that are out in front of us. There's 2 or 3 more grant cycles that we have in front of us that we'll be working directly with the county on. But overall, I think we've done a fair amount in a very short period of time. And that's all I have, Ira.
All right. Any questions for Sean at this point? Any clarifications that you'd like to see or understand? The only thing, excuse me.
Howard, can we get a copy of this presentation?
Yeah, that should be fine. Is that okay, Sean, just to clarify?
Yeah, it just, as long as it stays with the county, it is confidential information on here, some of the future builds, but we can definitely get that over to you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, definitely. We can get you a copy of that. We'll probably put it out there with your, where we put the board's meetings, and we'll just stick it out there so you guys have access to it on your laptops.
And Ira, any of the great grant areas, we can actually export those addresses to you if you want to pull them into your GIS. That is public knowledge.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Anything you can get to me in a KMZ or a shapefile would be great.
Yep, we'll do it.
Just a couple of minor things I'd like to bring up. We have some opportunities that are coming up. One of the things, Sean, can you flip back to the slide where you focus in on Northwest, the Oak Ridge Tower with the fiber builds? Yep. Oh, whack one. Where you yeah.
I think there's a zoom in of that. Hold on. There you go.
There you go. Yeah. So the 2 yellow lines, Cloudwise has approached us and discussed the opportunities here to connect the one going to the north, which is going directly to MCNC, and then the one going to south, which is covering some more neighborhoods and households. It'll add quite a few households available to the fiber up in that area. We still have, I guess spent's the right word, spent 1.8 million of the original CARES Act money that we allotted to this, the lost revenue CARES Act money, just to clarify that. And so we have 200,000 left that we are allocated towards Cloudwise in this project. And the statement of work has changed a couple of times. We removed a few, specifically the water towers, because of the cost and the limited coverage of the water towers. We've kept reducing those numbers. So we finally just have eliminated the numbers on the water tower just because it's just not enough coverage for the cost and the hassle of putting something on those water towers. In most of this northern area, we're still looking at some of the opportunities in the southern area around some of the higher water towers down there. But so they're asking for us to change the statement of work to allocate the last 200,000 roughly towards these 2 fiber builds, mainly the one to the north to the MCNC, which would give more bandwidth and more opportunity to serve households. So just I have that statement of work over in legal, and actually I just got it to them at the end of last week, so it's kind of my fault on any delays there. But I'm hoping to get that to you for approval, and I'll review all the details of that at that time. So just want to kind of give you a heads up on that's kind of the next step that we're going to ask for approval on, and some clarification. But it all has to do with those 2 yellow lines branching off of the green line. Any questions on that? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, ma'am. I don't have a question, but I want to make a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Great report. This has been going on so long to a lot of our citizens have lost faith that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And for you to give this full report to commissioners as well as the public. It's a good feeling for me because we've been anticipating and hoping for this. It's since 2018 when we started dealing with Cloudwise.
Yeah.
So just want to say kudos, great report.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's still a work in progress. There's still tens of thousands of people that need it, and we're getting to them, as fast as we can. And we're not, Cloudwise is one of our key partners, but we're working with anybody that's allowing them to expand broadband too. But Cloudwise is doing the best job right now, and I think they're just to tout what they've done, and they're not just coming to us for partnerships. They've gone to Agape for a partnership. We didn't have to do anything with that, and they've gone to Town of Irwin for a partnership, even though I helped support them. We didn't have to do anything with that as a county. And, they're pursuing Coates and Andrew also. So it's, they're looking outside of us for ways to expand broadband to the county. And, I think their business model makes a lot of sense at this point. And then
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us who the other providers? We have other providers, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the normal incumbents, most people know them by CenturyLink, but Lumen, now they're called Brightspeed, are in the county still. Spectrum's an incumbent still. Ting is coming in from the northwest, from the Fuquay area. That's the big one that's not an incumbent, besides Cloudwise. But other than that, we still have the normal Windstream, just the normal people that are providing internet service up to now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then we're also pursuing further grants with CAB and GREAT. And there's some more opportunities. CAB is just just the next step of GREAT grants. They've called it something different, but it's really part of the state GREAT grants, just a different funding cycle. And I think that's the only thing I wanted to mention, but I just appreciate the time this morning, and I appreciate all the Cloudwise is doing for the county, and looking forward to the next report of where we have thousands of households on the system. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall? Very much.
Yep. Thank you.
And item number
Thanks,
4.
everyone.
Sean, did you have anything else to say, Sean?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank everyone for their support, and we'll continue to work with the county, and I appreciate all the work that Ira and team have put into pulling this together.
Thanks for joining us.
Take care.
Item number 4, we're going to discuss the selection of a vendor and approval of an agreement for the mobile medical clinic. Mr. Rouse, if you would.
Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
We've been talking since summer about a medical mobile unit, and we've gone through the RFP process and actually had 7 vendors to bid. One or expressed an interest. One decided not to bid. One was a trailer mobile unit that we did not ask for. 2 of them were over our budget of $409,000. So we had 3 that we could actually look at. 2 of the vendors, one was in the Midwest, one was in the Northeast. Biggest issues with them, we thought their service centers were located there, not close to us. There was some issues with training. A lot of that was on Zoom versus kind of hands-on. The one we're recommending is Mission Medical Mobile out of Greensboro. They'll come down and do hands-on training. They have their main service center, of course, is in Greensboro, which is 80, 90 miles away. And we felt that was kind of a better match for what we were looking for. So that's what we're recommending, that we go with that unit.
Mr. Chair, I believe it was noted on the agenda that we might be able to take action on this item today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go along with the recommendation by Mr. Rouse for awarding of this building of this mobile medical unit for us.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second in order to allow Mr. Rouse to go along with this mobile unit he has presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unopposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all.
Thank
We
you, sir.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right, moving on. Number 5, discuss Neels Creek Park concession restroom facility contract. Mr. Davis?
Yes, sir. So as you mentioned, talking about the contract for Neils Creek Park building, which will have a concession stand, restroom, and a storage building. This will obviously support not only Parks and Recreation, but also the school system being there at Harnett Central Middle School behind there. Currently, they're being serviced with 2 porta johns and then a concession stand that's basically a shed for all their athletic events they're having at the school and any events we have for Parks and Recreation. That services their softball and baseball field as well as the high school tennis courts. So I believe the Board of Commissioners kind of identified this project as something to look at. So we ended up finding some SCIF funding for that. I know there has been a little bit of changes in some SCIF funding and where we're looking at to pay this out of. I think Kimberly's been able to access some other funds to pay out of this, and then we'll use the SCIF funds to expand to other recreational activity or amenities throughout the county. We did put out a request for qualifications for this project for a design build. So not only the whole process of this contract is not just the construction, it's actually the design, architectural, engineering, and then as well as the construction at the end. It's a little bit more of a streamlined process than trying to go through all of them at the same time. We did have three firms that submitted qualifications, and a selection committee, as well as Parks and Recreation Development Services, and then Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee looked at those. We did select Samet Corporation to do that. They had a lot of design build experience and had done some Parks and Recreation projects. That's kind of we went with them. We have been talking with them over the last couple of months about negotiations of contracts, what we had in the SCIF funds, to see if they can do it during that price. They've done some preliminary stuff for us, but nothing official. Obviously, at this point, we're looking at doing the contract. Once this contract is signed, we'll get more involved with the school system also to make sure that we're meeting all their needs with this stuff too, with the design before we get into the contract. It is estimated that we'll be going through about June, July for construction. We're a little behind schedule, so we'll be in play for the spring, or I guess the fall semester of 2023 is when we hope to have this done. So you have the contract on your plate right now. Questions?
Questions?
This contract is for $444,225, I think.
I don't really have any questions. I would like to just thank Carl for his foresight and his efforts in getting us to this point. I think this continues the longstanding cooperation between county recreation and school system out at that site, and I think this will go a long way toward improving the experience, not only for our citizens who go through and participate in the recreation portion, but also for our students as well that attend that school. So thank you for your efforts with this.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Carl, the Shiners Park, when are y'all gonna kind of finalize doing that? Or either not so much finalize, I know it's still a long ways to go, but tell me the progress that you're making on that.
On Cape Fear Shiner
Yeah.
Park. So we've done phase 1 of that. That was the initial opening of the park, which had there's 2 ball fields, 2 multi-purpose fields, walking trail, sand volleyball court, and there's walking trails all around as well as canoe and kayak access there. That was phase 1. We're looking at phase 2. It's actually a CIP program right now that would bring in playground shelter, our playground picnic shelter, and restroom facility. And then we'll continue to build out. So it's a multi-phase construction project there. I think when we originally did the cost estimates, it was well into multi-million-dollar project for that. So we're looking at doing them a little bit at a time. Obviously, there's other needs that we're trying to focus on too outside of just one area. So we can't just do all of one park at the same time. It would be great if we could, but we're trying to do one phase here and then maybe do another phase at another site to be able to kind of offer it to the entire county citizens.
I understand that. But it'd be a great access to the Littleton area and to Harnett County, so I'm just eager to see it done.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's the pleasure of the board and there's no objection. We'll add this to the consent agenda for the 19th. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
All right, item 6, discuss the Riverside Community Drainage Improvement Project and the bid award, Phase 1. Lynn Lambert.
Good morning. It's been a while for us to get to this point. Our Riverside community citizens have been very patiently waiting for us to figure out somewhat of a solution to their drainage issues in the community and locate a funding source. So we're very excited to finally be at this stage in the project. We have put Phase 1 out to bid and received 2 different proposals for work on Phase 1, which consists of culvert improvements and cleaning out of drainage ditches to allow the watershed to work more appropriately in that area and carry stormwater away as it should, instead of it just sitting in the community, causing water to back up near homes and mosquito issues and snake issues and things of that nature. Phase 1 also includes removal of a large pile of tires that has been there for quite some time that is causing drainage to be impeded in the area as well. So we are making the recommendation, based on the bids that were submitted, that the contract for Phase 1 be awarded to MRP Grading and Clearing for this particular phase of the work, and we are looking at hopefully starting with equipment on the ground in January for that community to see some progress.
Thank you. Been a long time coming, but thank you. I've recently heard some citizens saying that water is pushing flowing up out of their houses and things, you know. So I just say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know the citizens thank you there. To live under those kind of conditions, I can't even imagine how they'd affect families there. So thank you, and thank you all the input that you have put into this project. I appreciate you.
You're certainly welcome.
And I would like to echo Commissioner McCoy's comments. This is an exciting time. This has been a long time coming. I appreciate Ms. McCoy keeping this at the forefront of our on our plates, if you will, so that we would get to this point one day. And so I'm glad we're here, and thank you for your efforts for that.
Any other questions or comments? Well, if it's the pleasure of the board and there isn't any objection, we will add this to the consent agenda for the 19th. Madam Clerk. Item 7, discuss a request to accept a LSTA food literacy grant.
Good morning.
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 So the public libraries have the opportunity to accept a State Library of North Carolina food literacy grant in the amount of $16,800, and that's with no matching funds or ongoing funds required. The purpose of this grant is to support food literacy and nutrition programming for North Carolina's public libraries. We are specifically asking for permission to accept this grant so that we can put the awarded funds towards purchasing a Charlie cart and supporting materials. The Charlie cart is an all-inclusive mobile kitchen that comes with 175 pieces of cooking equipment and appliances, and also a K-5 food and nutrition curriculum. So the library's goal is to partner with county agencies, including Parks and Rec, Soil and Water, the Cooperative Extension, and 4-H to bring the Charlie cart to various locations across Harnett County and to teach intergenerational food literacy programs with a specific focus on multicultural education, food safety, and balanced nutrition. Are there any questions?
Pleasure of the board to add this to the consent agenda as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 8, discuss a resolution by the governing body of Harnett County whereby the establishment and maintenance of accounts have been authorized for multi-bank securities. Ms. Kimberly Honeycutt.
Good morning. So basically, General Statute 159 is what is referred to as the local finance section. And within that statute, it gives the finance officer and the board specific directions on the activity to be taken for the county's finances. One of those is the establishment of bank accounts. So ordinarily, when we open up a bank account with different financial institutions, it requires a resolution by the board. What I have included in your package is a resolution which would give me, the finance officer, and then Brent Trout as the manager, and then Alan Coates as the deputy finance officer, authority to carry on the investment of activities, the deposit and withdrawal of activities. And Multibank is actually the firm that we have selected, or that we use to invest the county's idle funds. Also within statute 159 is a section that allows me as the finance officer to invest the county's idle funds. And specific investment directions are included in the county's fiscal policy. We are restricted. I cannot invest in securities that are not safe, securities that are not backed by pledges. Very, very specific, and that's something that's really unique to North Carolina. So if you approve this form, it would allow us to invest the county's idle funds. That's kind of, any questions? It's kind of a little difficult to explain, but basically it just gives us the authority to conduct transactions on your behalf. And with the interest rates increasing as they are, we're looking now where we have been able to set aside defined fund balances in certain funds to invest those idle funds to increase our purchasing power, like toward our debt, toward our health insurance. So hopefully I would like to take advantage of the increasing interest rates. Any questions?
Any questions? Is there any objection to this resolution? We'll add this to the consent agendas.
All right, and so I'm up to number 9.
You're up to number 9.
So just take that discussion one step further. Anytime we have a change in the chairman of the board, the statute also requires dual signatures on our checks. That signature being the chairman of the board and me as your finance officer. So anytime we have a change of chairman, we are required to have a resolution to re-sign a signature card so that I can start printing checks, well, actually, forms of payment with the chairman, and then there's the finance officer. So it's just a matter of, it's a housekeeping item. And that document's in your package as well.
Anybody have any questions? Any objections to adding this to the consent agenda?
That need to be done today, or can it wait till the next?
It can wait. It can wait, because right now we are currently still issuing payments under the old resolution, which was
Right. I just didn't know if it needed immediate effect because you
no, not
you could write
necessarily.
checks.
Pleasure of the board. Objection? Add that to the consent agenda as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item 10, discuss the capital improvement plan. Ms. McFadden.
Well, I'm available for any questions you may have before you make a recommendation for approval.
Any members have any questions for? Questions? Does anybody have an objection for us to put this on the consent agenda for next week to approve? Commissioner Witherspoon? Good. Guess we'll put this on the consent agenda as well then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 11, review boards and committees commissioners serve on. Commissioners, in front of you, you have a packet of all the boards that you currently sit on.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to take a minute to discuss the Harnett County Board of Equalization and Review, where there is one vacancy for District 3 on this board. If you will remember, a while back, I did recommend the appointment of Mr. Michael Jackson to that position. At that time, because of a pending appeal, I think on some tax reeval, some property that Mr. Jackson had, that was put on hold. It is my understanding that that appeal has moved past the county level, is now at the state level. Since that time, we received an application not only from Mr. Joe Langley, but also Mr. Jason Lemons for that position. However, based on my initial recommendation to Mr. Jackson, I would like to proceed to recommend Mr. Michael Jackson for that position on the Board of Equalization and Review.
Form of a motion.
Well,
Here,
for next year.
Can I stop you real
Sure.
quick, Commissioner? That's on item 12. We'll get to that in just a second. Right now, we're going to review the.
Pardon me, I jumped
No
ahead.
problems. I didn't want to interrupt you there.
Bank all that stuff I said because I could never say it again, so.
Does anybody have any issues on boards that we currently sit on?
No, but I don't, but I do want to ask, who else serves on that Board of Equalization? Who else, can I have the names of the people that? Is it
Are
on
we
here?
talking about the committees for citizens?
yeah.
Yeah, we're going to address that in the next item.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
If nobody has any issues with the boards that we currently sit on,
No,
then we will move on to item number 12.
I'm sorry to sidetrack us there.
No worries.
No.
All right.
We do have a couple where former Commissioner Johnson served on, the Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Committee, the Averysboro Township Tourism Development Authority, and the Cape Fear River Assembly Board. If you guys would just kind of think about if you would, who you would like to serve on those.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think it would stand to reason to give those to Mr. Marsh since he's actually filled that seat from that district.
That'll be fine.
Okay.
Take care of that.
Thank you, guys.
Anything else? All right, moving on to item number 12, review application to serve on boards and committees.
Ditto for what I said earlier.
Chairman,
Understood.
Chairman,
Here, do we need that in the form of a motion or anything in order to?
I mean,
I'd like to request, though, that even though that is moved to the state level, we are still very involved in that case. I understand the recommendation, but I think that it would be best if he's not appointed to the board until such time as his case is completed.
The problem I have with that, Mr. Trout, is that I continue to get recommendations because it continues to be advertised. And I requested that we pull that back and was told we could not do that.
Okay.
So I
understand.
I'm reluctant to continue to sit on this and have citizens who want to serve and think I don't want them to serve.
Understood.
It is the fact that I'd already recommended somebody for this position.
Understood.
Now, that can be recalled if in the future something is determined.
Yeah, I think,
You know, I would think if anything comes up that is a conflict of interest for Mr. Jackson, that he can always recuse himself, just like any of us can.
understood.
Does that need to be in the form of a motion, or can we go ahead and?
For what it's worth, Mr. Chairman, I'll reiterate what County Manager say. It's gone to the state level of the PTC, but my office, the legal office here in Harnett County, is still very heavily involved in that case. It's a rather large case for Harnett County, and I just don't think it would look good for those appeals to be ongoing at the same time that you're naming that same individual to serve on the Board of Equalization and Review. I can see where Commissioner Matthews is coming from, but it doesn't look, it wouldn't look good.
And I respect your opinion, Mr. Snow, but it doesn't look good to me when I continue to have constituents that want to be appointed to that position that we continue to advertise when at the time I made that recommendation months ago, or certainly weeks ago, the informal consensus of the board was to move ahead with that. Now, if we could pull that back and not have to keep it advertised, I'll be fine with that.
How long do we anticipate this appeal taking? Do we know?
It has not yet been set by the PTC for actual hearing. I anticipate it will come up for hearing probably in the early spring. We've got caseloads coming up in January, February, and March, and April coming up with the PTC, so it could be scheduled for any one of those terms.
I think since there's a recommendation for the appointment, that is probably enough that we could stop publishing as it relates to the position. In other words, a person has been selected, authorization for sitting on the board can be held back since that's a recommendation for appointment, could stop publishing seeking a replacement for that position. If, when it comes to a final vote, that person is not selected, then we would re-advertise.
I would be fine with that. That's what brought this to light to start with.
Understood.
Thank you.
Does that need to be in the form of a motion?
So would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Well, I don't know that we need to do that now, as long as the understanding is we're gonna stop advertising a vacancy here. Is that right, Mr. Appeal, Melissa?
Yeah, I think
we've received direction now.
Yeah.
That we can do that, I believe.
Okay.
Are you?
Then I'm good with that, Mr. Chair.
So just so I'm clear, we are going to stop advertising the position. We have made a selection, but it's going to be based off of.
the ending of his appeal.
Understood. Is there any objection to that? What's the pleasure of the board? A recommendation in order to do that, Mr. Matthews? Okay.
So note that in the minute.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Any other applications to serve on boards and committees?
Mr. Chairman, may I speak? I'm referring to the Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Council, which was brought up in our last meeting, and an application was submitted from my district. And at that time, I had said that I didn't know the lady, and I'm not putting people on boards or suggesting people on boards that I don't have any knowledge of. But I want to say that I spoke to her, and we talked for a few minutes, and her interest in serving on this board makes her the right candidate. So I highly approve of her serving on this committee. And this is something I'm saying that we all should know. We need to know who we're putting on these boards. We need to know something about their desire to serve and the reason they want to serve on these boards. So I just want to say, highly approve her. She has a great interest, and she has been informed on some things and been involved in things that affect this kind of a board. So thank you for allowing me to talk to her, and I highly approve.
So I have a recommendation for Ms. Jacqueline Bancroft from Commissioner, pardon me for a second, from Commissioner McCoy, in order to go ahead and approve Ms. Bancroft to the Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Council. Any issues with that? Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, number 13, lobbying firm selection.
Thank you, Chairman. I put information on your table today related to this item. A little bit of history. Back when I was in Topeka, Kansas, we hired a lobbying firm to represent us up on the Hill, so to speak, for legislative matters. I found it to be very effective. The city of Topeka had been using this same individual for a number of years. It was really helpful for us to be able to have someone representing us on the Hill. They found out about things much earlier than I would have. We're finding out about them before they ever hit the paper if there's something that's being considered. Their connections also allowed us to understand better what was going on in the internal workings on a particular issue, much more detail than what they might be presenting in the newspapers. This representation is something that I feel Harnett County needs. We are at a critical point as we're growing here, and I feel that it would be a good investment for us to have that. In addition, as we've seen, we've received a number of grants in the last few years that have helped us with a number of projects. And I think that funding is still available. We want to be able to make sure that we're able to approach folks that are making those kinds of decisions on the Hill to make sure that our needs and our information is presented to them so that we can be considered to receive some of that funding. I did the research. I sent out an RFP for request for proposals from individuals that do this kind of work. We had 3 firms that submitted their proposals. I went through and reviewed them, and I have selected, in my opinion, Kairos. It's called Kairos Government Affairs. They have strong individuals that have experience working with individuals at the state that we need to be able to be in contact with, both on the legislative side and also in the administration side. So their initial request was for $5,000 per month. I talked to them, and they've agreed to lower their fee to $4,000 per month, and so they will hold that rate at $4,000 per month for 2 years, and then the 3rd year they would raise it to $4,500 per month. So I feel this is an appropriate fee charge, and then also I think that we have the right firm. So wanted to bring this before you. We are for discussion now so that we could put it on the agenda for action at the next meeting, because time is of the essence. The new session is going to start soon. I have slated January 10th as our opportunity to discuss legislative priorities as a board and which projects we would like to seek funding for. And I would like to be able to have this firm on board, recommended for hire and contracted, so they could be present at our meeting on the 10th to advise us on any items that we're seeking to include as our legislative priorities. So I'll stand for any questions you may have.
If I'm, excuse me, if I may, while working on this with Mr. Trout, I contacted a number of legislators, both senators and House of Representative members that I know, to get their opinion on not only Kairos, but the other 2 people that responded to the RFP. Without a doubt, Kairos is very highly thought of and comes very highly recommended. I've also talked to past chairman for the Republican caucus in the House, and again, a glowing recommendation for this firm. So I would like to see us move forward in selecting Kairos as lobbyist firm for Harnett County.
I do.
Was that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
I have that was in the form of a motion, Commissioner.
Well, since we don't vote on that in this meeting, it would be more of a consensus of the board as to put it on the agenda for the next meeting next Monday, or put it on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend, I've got a few more things I'd like to research on it. Put it on for a line item for next meeting, if you will, please. I'll make that in the form of a motion.
I don't have a motion, I have a question.
Well, I have a motion on the floor currently in order to put this as a line item, but it's not a motion item, correct?
You don't need a motion, just ask it to be added to the agenda as a line item.
Yeah,
You don't need a motion.
All right, Ms. McCoy, I'm going to get your questions.
I just have a
comments
question for our manager. With this firm, they will inform us about what they feel like they should be lobbying on the behalf of Harnett County, right?
Right. They'll have a pulse for what is going on up on the hill. If
Right.
there are issues that we need to be
And,
weighing in on, they'll seek guidance from us on where our position is on the particular items. We obviously will look at what we feel are the priorities that we want to have, and they'll pursue those with the folks up on the hill to make sure that our voice is heard on what our priorities are. But in addition, they'll be advising us as to uh, what's happening as far as maybe how the legislation is being crafted, what little nuances are existing within the language so that they can inform us as to how that piece of legislation might impact us, so then we can give them guidance as to how to pursue the issue, whether we support the item as it's presented, or if we would request that changes need to be done to amend the legislation to make it better fit our desires. And so it'll be a two-way street back and forth. They'll inform us, and we'll give them guidance on what we'd like to see.
thank you. And that's the question I think needed to be answered before we vote any firm in. So I appreciate that because I think it's needed. I really do think it's needed. So thank you so much.
Right, any other questions? Well, I have the request to add this as a line item for discussion at the following meeting. If that's the pleasure of the board and there's no objection.
I would like to see it be a separate item as well, Mr. Chair. I guess I was aware that maybe there had been some discussions. I was not aware that there had been an RFP issued. I did not know we were this far along in the process, so I would like that to be a separate item for discussion.
Ms. McCoy? Commissioner Weatherspoon? Good. And we'll add that as a separate line item for next.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
County Manager's Report.
At this point, I don't have anything additional to add. We have items that we will be having. I guess the only item they would have is asked for discussion regarding whether or not we would like to cancel the meeting on December 28th. It was brought up a few weeks ago about that possibility. And so wanted to make sure, because if that is the desire of the board, then we need to add that to the agenda for the next meeting so that we actually take an action saying we will not have that meeting. So would you like me to have an item on the agenda to cancel the December 28th meeting?
I'm good.
Good with canceling? Good. Commissioner Matthews?
I'm fine with that as well, if that's the pleasure of the board.
So
Add that as well.
the impact will be is we will still have our first meeting in January because there are items such even as budget amendments and those types of things. So we'll have our first meeting in January, but since we don't have a work session, the agenda will be very light. Any items that we need to approve, we'll put on as separate items so they're classified as new business so that we can have a full discussion on them before taking action. So it'll be a much more limited agenda than we typically see, but we will need to have that first meeting in January in order to approve budget amendments and other items.
That's very good. That would have been my only question, that if we had something we really needed some discussion time on, but in view of that, I'm fine with that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trout. Do we have a need for a closed session today? Well,
Make a motion, we adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. Without objection, we are adjourned.